Thanks, Tim, and thanks everyone for tuning in today. Appreciate your time. We'll smash through it in the next 10 minutes for the presentation, and then we look forward to opening up for any questions or comments and a bit of an interaction. So if we go through the slides, what is Butn, and really why is Butn a hidden gem, which is, I guess, why we're here today. Firstly, we're a very tightly held share register. There are top 4 shareholders that own approximately 75 to 80%, which means we really do truly fly under the radar. We've been here before. We're a proven B2B differentiated fintech. We're often incorrectly classified as a buy now, pay later. We're not a buy now, pay later. We're in the B2B transactional funding space. We've been in this space nearly 7 years and done well over $700–800 million of funding to date. So again, we've really strongly doubled down in this space. Why are we also a hidden gem? Well, because of MYOB, fully owned by KKR Private Equity, has a 20% strategic ownership in Butn Limited. And also in conjunction to that, we have a software partnership which provides us with the ultimate reach to MYOB's over 1.2 million businesses across their multiple platforms. Hidden gems going forward, we consistently delivered on what we said across our partners, our growth and our debt. So what we as Tim touched on, we listed near on 12 months ago. We've delivered exactly what we've said we would in the prospectus and over and above what we've said we would across our partners, our JVs, our growth metrics and our debt metrics, doubling down as well. Why is Butn hidden gem number 5? With market movements, we believe we are trading currently at a relatively attractive valuation. We've seen, as Tim again mentioned, the market's extremely volatile at this moment, but having proven what we said we've proven and having done exactly what we've done to date, we believe that now is a great time to buy into Butn. Next slide. Butn's vision, your money today. We're one of Australia's largest transactional funders, and Butn was built to partner. Butn is not a standalone business. Everything we do, we partner with other businesses and we partner for success. And our byline really is funding at the click of a button. We have the ability now to embed our technology into independent third-party platforms to open up that funding for those customers, for those end users, literally at the click of a button. And when we talk about Butn, it really is the home of business and transactions. So that is a button embedded into third-party platforms to allow those end users instant access to finance. Everyone's heard the buzzword embedded finance. We set out nearly 2–3 years ago to build embedded finance. We were first to market with embedded finance. Our strategic partner with MYOB and KKR saw this opportunity and then came along for the ride again with their 20% holding as part of that tightly held share register we touched on before. Next slide. What is embedded finance and why is it the future of funding? Again, embedded finance now is the buzzword. You've seen it heavily in the B2C, in the business to consumer space. We know the business to consumer space now is heavily diluted. Many players coming in, trying to take that market. We're differentiated in the B2B space. That's only business to business. Again, we've been in this space for a number of years. We listed off the back of this, and now we have the technology to back it up. Embedded finance really means that, number one, you get instant or near immediate or instant access to funding, which means the finance, the button, the technology is embedded where that particular business transacts, where that business lives. So that means the business now to access funding does not need to go to Google, does not need to call their broker, does not need to call their bank. It's actually a button on their desktop, on their system, 1 click, 10-minute registration, and then 15 seconds to funding. Secondly, we access through our open APIs to leverage the rich accessible data within that third-party platform. So what we now see is because we're, again, embedded in these third-party platforms, we have the ability to pull out that historical data. And once we pull out that historical data from the third-party platform, we can make that instant credit decision much richer and much stronger than it would be otherwise. Number 3, again, near immediate credit decisions that are better and less open to fraud. So for every transaction, there's 3 or 4 parties. And again, we're one of Australia's largest transactional funders. And this is really how we look through our funding model. So we pull out data from the buyer, we pull out data from the seller, we pull out data from the independent third-party platform that we've plugged into. And off those 3 different paths, We make our credit decisioning within under 10 minutes. Again, very, very hard to have fraud when there's 3 independent parties in every transaction. Number 4, what we call the true competitive moat. We're there at the time of transacting, at the place of transacting. The company or the business looking for funding does not need to leave that particular ecosystem to access that funding, whereas previously they would have, again, had to call Google, call the bank, or call their brokers. We're right there again. Funding at the click of a button. Next slide. What are Butn's capabilities? We've touched on it before. Number 1, our strategic partnership model. Butn is not a standalone business. Butn was built to partner. We've partnered with the likes of MYOB. We've partnered again with the likes of Freightlancer and others that we've announced recently. And this is really how we take our tech and how we take our funding model to the nth degree. This gives us mass origination, mass distribution, and a very low cost of acquisition because we're embedded and because we're integrated within these third-party platforms. We also have, again, the data verification and insights that allows us to get that quick credit decisioning. In workflow approach, when a company today creates a transaction, whether it's an invoice, whether they need trade finance, they're creating it on a platform, whether that platform is MYOB, whether that platform is a marketplace, whether that platform is a CRM system, multifarious platforms. Butn's open APIs allow us to integrate and to embed and to overlay our technology within those third-party platforms, creating this competitive moat. So they don't have to leave that ecosystem. They don't have to look for other funders because all the funding they need is right there at their fingertips at the click of a button. We have a differentiated approach that we call transactional funding. Butn, one of Australia's largest transactional funders. This allows us to have low risks and low losses, which we'll say further on. But it allows us also to have flexible, transparent pricing to those customers, which is efficient as well. We have a fixed fee per transaction model. We don't charge admin fees, upload fees, download fees. It's a fixed fee per transaction model, which is very clean and very capable for those end users to understand what they're being charged, how long they're being charged, and when they have to pay it back. And every business is only as good as its team. Butn, being 7 years in the B2B space, founder-led between myself and my co-founder, Walter Rappaport. We've taken this business from inception, near on 7 years ago, to nearly well over 800 million of funding to date and continuing to perform. As we said in the prospectus near on a year ago when we listed, the business model is now being proven out. It's fast growth, and we're again doubling down on those industry low losses that sit below 0.1% of total cumulative transactional funding to date. Next slide. High level of Butn products. We have a spectrum of products that we offer, SMEs in the B2B funding space. The main products that we offer the market are Butn, Butn Pay, and Butn Now. Butn is our take on invoice factoring, where we'll fund up to 100% of the invoice value less the fee. We give them up to 90 days from the invoice value. And again, this is based on a transaction by transaction basis. We've touched on it before, buy now, pay later. We're grouped as buy now, pay later, but we're not buy now, pay later. We have a product called Butn Pay, which is our trade finance product, which allows a company to go and buy their inputs when they need those inputs, turn it to an invoice, sell it onto the invoice, and then allow us to fund it off the back of Butn. Butn Now is our third product, which is advanced commission products. Real estate agents or mortgage brokers settle a deal. They're waiting up to 30, 60 days to access those commissions. Butn Now has the ability to bring forward those commissions, and the business has access to those commissions at day one instead of waiting those 30, 60, or 90 days. Next slide. Just flying through the numbers. Again, these are all public numbers. Origination growth up 30% to over $120 million. Consecutive record quarters, Q1 and Q2 F22, and the growth again being delivered with our historical low write-offs of under 0.1%, which we believe is the envy of anyone in our space. Originations again tracking high. Total originations up 30%. The millions in revenue up also near on 12%. So great growth story that we're continuing to grow. Next slide. Positive platform performance. As we said before, we have the ability now to grow with a low cost of acquisition. You won't see Butn with huge billboards anywhere. We're built to partner, and we distribute our products through our partnership model. Maya, with over 1.2 million businesses within their ecosystem, strategic partner and 20% holder in Butn, fully owned by KKR Private Equity. Freightlancer, another subsidiary of Freelancer, over 50 million freelancers within that platform. Huge win for Butn. AgentBox, one of the leading real estate agency CRM systems. Ozedi, Offload, etc. So really a number of key strategic partnerships that we continue to distribute the Butn suite of products with. And you can see on the right-hand side, the originations platform growth. We're tracking at 18 times growth month on month. So really huge numbers coming out of that. Next slide, please. We've touched on debt as well. We've successfully restructured our debt. Cost of funds, reducing the cost of funds recently to 6.2% per annum from 8.4%, which is a direct to bottom line position. And again, this increases our origination, our capacity as well to fund nearing on nearly $300+ million. Next slide. Investment summary, as we touched on, massive opportunity. We offer B2B in the $300 billion space. We're a proven performer, well over $700 million funded to date, leading credit risk management, industry low write-offs is less than 0.1%, embedded fintech technology. Everyone's talking about embedded finance. We were there first and front and center. We have a growth tipping point as well, which allows us to plug into third-party platforms, scalable at growth, low cost of acquisitions, and increasing that operating leverage. Founded by myself and my co-founder, Walter Rappaport, highly credentialed board, including Mike Hurst, ex-CEO of Bendigo and Adelaide Bank, an experienced management team. Tim.
Well, thank you for that. A couple of questions here. Who's the actual end funder? Is that the Butn itself? And who are the partners behind that funding further down the path?
Sure, so that is correct. So Butn does the actual funding. We do the credit, we do the registration of the end user, we do the funding of the end user and the reconciliation of the end user. So really it's a plug and play. What we say internally, plug and play, you get funded today. So we'll take that plug and play technology into the third party platform. We'll run the credit, we'll provide the funding, and then we'll reconcile it at the end. And the third party platform allows their end users to get instant access to finance.
And sorry, so you're the Butn is the source of funding?
Correct.
Right.
That's exactly right.
And can you talk about kind of your fee structure and your margins through these transactions?
Sure. So as we touched on, we're fixed fee per transaction. So we don't charge an interest rate. We're one of Australia's largest transactional funders. And for every transaction that goes through the book, it's a fixed fee, and that fee can sit anywhere between 2 and 5%. On that particular transaction. So we are in this sort of this high growth, high volume model.
And given there is a focus on this kind of small business or SME as your client, who are the competitors in this space at the moment?
Sure. Look, again, we started this business. We started building nearly 7 years ago. We started building out the technology nearly 3 years ago. We're ahead of the game within embedded finance, especially in the B2B space. We're one of the, again, we're the sole funder today on MyOb as well with their million businesses. So when you talk about competitors, we're not naive enough to think the competitors will come for us, but at this stage, we believe we're well ahead of the game.
And there's a good question here. Will a rising interest rate and inflationary environment squeeze your margins?
The margins on one side, but the funding is on the other side. So what we're seeing again is that high growth coming in now as well with the various JVs and partnerships that we're doing, that high distribution. And while the margins are on one side might be changing, on the other side, we're seeing the increased transactional volume through the book. So again, we're in that high volume environment.
And where does the credit risk sit of the customer?
With Butn.
With Butn.
Correct. So that's what, and again, talking about the credit risk, as we touched on before, 0.1, but less than 0.1% across nearly 800 plus million of transactional value to date. So we're very comfortable with our underwriting process, with our credit writing process, again, as we continue to scale, because we do have access to that third-party data from those independent JVs that we've integrated with.
And the pathway to profitability, you mentioned revenue. Where are you in regards to profitability?
So we haven't officially put our forecast, but we can tell you that if the growth numbers continue like we're seeing now on the platform with the low cost of acquisitions and the cost of our funding coming down, which is what we've achieved, everything's pointing in the right direction.
And finally, I mean, it's a great partnership with MYOB there. And as a shareholder, did they play any role in terms of management or input into the business?
Sure. So MYOB has a board-appointed seat on our board as well. So they're actively involved. They're not passive, they're active investors. MYOB went out to market to find a partner. After months of their due diligence, etc., they came on, again, not only with a strategic partnership with our technology embedded actually into their platform, but also with a 20% holder and a board seat. So we're, that for us is a huge tick of approval, and also that for us is obviously a huge win, given their market size and their market reach, and they're owned by KKR Private Equity, one of the largest private equity groups in the world.
So essentially, you can access their client base. Is that right?
That's exactly correct.
Gotcha. And would their shareholding kind of restrict you to work with the likes of Xero, for example?
What we say is, MYOB and Xero play different roles in different spaces. With MYOB's huge reach today, again, with over 1.2 million businesses across many millions of different areas within their business, there's plenty of Butn to do. So we've listed under a year and we're just scratching the surface. But if the numbers are anything to go by, and our growth numbers are anything to go by, what we've done just in this year with MYOB alone, we can see that it's definitely the sky's the limit.
Rael, thank you for your time. Have a nice weekend. We'll follow your story with interest.
Looking forward. Thank you again, Tim. Appreciate your time and everyone else.